If I'm going to review rendering in pen and ink and Franklin Booth, then you better believe that Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein is not far behind. Welcome back to Fat Stacks. It doesn't take long to see how well this edition features Wrightson's work. It's here on the end sheets as soon as you open the book, and you quickly see another illustration across from the dedication to Roy Krenkel, who, you'll remember, wrote the introduction to the Franklin Booth book called Painter with a Pen, which I reviewed in my last video. This book was originally published in 1983 by Marvel Comics, and like a lot of the others that I've reviewed, it was long out of print by the time I was looking for it in the early to mid 2000s. But in 2008, when Dark Horse Books reprinted it, I snatched it up right away because I felt like it had perfect examples of so many of the difficult concepts I was discussing in my classes, especially around how line work strategies relate to value structure and composition. And while Franklin Booth and so many others get the job done in that area as well, these illustrations just perfectly balance the mood of intense and exciting subject matter with technical brilliance and subtle fine art sensibilities. Just wait until you see the montage of still lives that are hidden in his compositions that I'll show you later. I admired the work of Bernie Wrightson long before this edition ever came out, but when it did come out, this book and its design really reintroduced me to Bernie Wrightson's work in a whole new and interesting way. The foil stamping on the cover and the typeface I feel are so charming and appropriate to the period, and the black fabric does so well to frame the portrait of the monster. But you can see that some of the foil stamping has come off, and the black fabric really collects a lot of dust and dirt. So for a studio copy, it's kind of hard to keep clean, but I don't mind. I keep it around anyway to look through as I make my own work for techniques and ideas. And one thing that I want to make sure to mention is the design of the interior of this book, which I think is immaculate, down to the historically accurate typefaces and the layout that makes it feel like a 19th century manuscript. It does so well to showcase Bernie Wrightson's illustrations. Not long after I got this book, I got a chance to meet Bernie Wrightson in person at a comic book convention in Boston. I was very lucky. He spent a lot of time talking with me, and I had some samples of my work with me at the time, and he took a really good, long, careful look at them, talked to me about my ambitions, and my art, and my life. What a generous man. I'm so thankful for that. If you want to know what Bernie shared with me about how he selected the illustrations that went into this book, then hang around to the end and I'll share that story with you. This edition starts off with a funny introduction by Stephen King from 1982, who spends as much time talking about the novel as he does reminding us that he has written so many introductions to Frankenstein in the past that we should probably go ahead and read those instead. And when he does talk about the book, he's mostly going on about how difficult and mildly disappointing it is to read. But in the end, he cheerily reminds us that Wrightson's illustrations are a good introduction to help people appreciate what a great novel Frankenstein truly is, and I agree. After the introduction, the novel starts right away with Walton's letters to his sister, Miss Seville, and before we even finish those melancholy musings, we meet Wrightson's first full-page illustration on page 3. We get 3 images to go along with the 6 letters and 15 pages. And Wrightson's work does so much to fill out Shelley's famous framing device. Already we're treated to some magnificent line work and some stunning compositions. I love moments like this, where we can see the choices that Bernie Wrightson is making in how he uses line work in different parts of his composition. It's as if he thinks of these two areas as characters, and because he does so, he treats it really differently. You can see that there's a lot more shape and a lot more form and a lot more activity. These almost look like the waves in the ocean. And this character is much quieter, more secondary. And all the way up here at the top, we have another mast. And here we can see the form of the wood running through and the lines wrapping around it. And that form is so clear. And these pipes of fabric are coming down so obviously, so this becomes a really important part of the composition. And of course, we have Walton right in the center, with his face in high contrast, surrounded by darks on either side. In moments like this, I love the way he wraps his lines around the form and allows this white shape to interrupt these small lines so that we can see layering even within a condensed space like this. And here, we see that he shows us the difference in shapes just by changing the line direction that he wraps around the form, so that we can see the difference in the directions and the shapes without changing value. And I love the way he stops the line here without any clear edge or outline. That gives a kind of irregular surface to the edge that we can track without seeing any clear border. It creates a lot of interest. In this area of the composition, I love the relationship between these three heads and the V-shaped connection between the angle of these heads that frames the portrait of Frankenstein. And for as excellent as this portrait is, I feel like the compressed values in this character and the framing, this subcomposition here, makes it one of the most interesting portraits in the book. As Captain Walton's letters close and Victor Frankenstein begins his account, Chapter 1 opens the novel's main narrative, and quickly we reach one of my favorite illustrations, maybe of all time. So much so that it became one of the 2 prints that I bought from Bernie when I met him. This page sums up why I love Wrightson's work in this book. He takes the time to set the scene, the mood, and the atmosphere. Even within a pen and ink style that can sometimes read as formal or over-rendered, he finds a quiet, unhurried rhythm. It's calm and serene, yet still the underlying melancholy of the book is always present. The composition is framed like a Vermeer, with the strong, dark shapes of the fabric framing the scene beyond. The image opens into several sub-compositions worth lingering on. It also reveals Wrightson's love of still lives. The construction of the books and the lone shoe and the energetic line work that define them, that makes them feel as alive as anything else in the room. In the background, the faint pattern on the pillow and the delicate pull on the fringe and tassel tell us the story of gravity, and maybe a quiet reminder that there are always larger forces that cannot be escaped. The rain patterns on the window activate secondary spaces. They're alternating positive and negative shapes vying for attention, another display of Wrightson's focus on shape design. Even the shadow on the wall seems to show the impact of the weight of the world on Frankenstein's shoulders, yet he reads as calm and even resolved. The caption below reads, "It was the secrets of heaven and earth that I desired to learn." The next 3 illustrations continue that slow, careful work of setting the tone. Taken together, they keep us in a contemplative space, as if we're holding our breath, knowing that the monster is still ahead. The genius here is that even without the creature on the page, there's quiet action everywhere. It's an elevation of the mundane. The last image in this set also introduces what this book will eventually be known for, which is Wrightson's extraordinary control of value in the dense, chaotic spaces that he creates. He organizes the clutter with light and shadow, stacking planes and carving clear pathways so our eyes can wander Dr. Frankenstein's lab, and it feels like we can look around every corner. It's patient, legible, and immersive. In the next pages, Frankenstein continues telling his tale to Walton. His story has plenty of existential dread baked in, but is a little light on details at this point, and Frankenstein even says it outright. "I see by your eagerness and the wonder and hope in your eyes that you expect to be informed of the secret with which I am acquainted, but that cannot be. Listen patiently until the end of my story, and you will easily perceive why I am reserved on the subject." It's classic Victor, the friend who says, "I can't talk about it," and then talks about it for roughly 200 more pages. But luckily for us, just 2 pages later, and we finally get a glimpse of some grim artifact of Victor's work, and I love this composition. Wrightson's compositional restraint echoes Victor's perfectly. All we get of the corpse's identity is a close-up look at the pair of feet, heavy at the heel, while most of the page is given over to background and atmosphere. Light really does a lot of the storytelling here. The lantern's metal bands cast rings of shadow that wrap around Frankenstein's sleeve, and the glow makes the rest of the composition even more exciting than the corpse itself, and Wrightson is showing his prowess at creating visual suspense. But never fear, in just 3 more pages, suspense over, we finally meet head-on the monster himself. But again, despite the fact that Wrightson features the face in a big way in this particular composition, this moment here, the monster's desperately gripping fingers, is for me the most exciting part of this image. It reminds me a lot of Carpeau's Ugolino and Sons, one of my favorite sculptures of all time. It lives in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and when you first approach this monumental marvel carving, you will find yourself almost eye level with what is, in my opinion, one of art history's most concentrated expressions of anguish. The figures of Ugolino's son are writhing around him. Their despair is illustrated in an almost perfect naturalism carved directly into stone. Ugolino, interestingly, seems to be made of different stuff than his children. His body is carved in an almost cartoonish style. The forms and shapes of his anatomy are idealized and exaggerated. The contrast in styles makes me wonder about Carpeau's intentions, and if his patchwork composition was inspired by the monster from Shelley's book when he completed his masterpiece more than 4 decades after Frankenstein's first printing. Carpeau's composition, like Wrightson's Frankenstein, is filled with desperately grasping hands and feet, making me wonder if Wrightson's work was inspired by this statue as much as it was by the story of Frankenstein itself. The next image definitely doesn't starve us for a full-on view of the monster, and here he is looking unexpectedly well put together and strangely a little sexy. But Bernie gives us a break with some slow and quiet landscapes before offering up one of the most dynamic poses in the book, with this horrifyingly disjointed confrontational stance the monster is taking. Again, we see that beyond his meticulous line work, Wrightson has such a great grasp of form and construction, in this case in the figure, but in terms of the story as well. Notice the rhythm of the illustrations as they create beats throughout the storyline, and how powerful the pacing is, which is so essential to how Wrightson tells his version of this story. Well, speaking of pacing, before we finish up, I wanted to share with you what Bernie told me at the comic convention. So of course I had lots of questions for him. I was asking him all sorts of things about his process and his work and his life, and he was really forthcoming with me. But while we were talking, I was looking through the prints that he was selling, and you saw the 2 prints that I bought before in the video. And I noticed on the table that there were drawings that were clearly from Frankenstein or for Frankenstein, but were not in this book. And I asked him, I said, well, did this book edit out some images, or how, where are these extra images from? And he told me that when he first started the project, he simply read the book, right? He read through Frankenstein and he made notes, and he said, well, which of these, parts of the story, or what stands out to me? And then he started illustrating those things. And when he completed that set, he put it back into the book, and he looked at the whole thing as a whole, not just as one illustration at a time, but as a whole book. And he realized that he had chosen illustrations that were denser in one portion of the book and kind of scarce in another portion. And he said that it had a kind of uneven reading. So he decided that although he had put in all of this effort to illustrate these incredibly time-consuming drawings that he's making, he just edited a bunch of them out and made new ones to kind of fill in the gaps. And when you read this, you'll realize how well-paced, how kind of evenly stitched the drawings are into the fabric of this story. And I really appreciate that, reflecting back on the discipline that it must have taken for him to decide to let go of all the work that he put into the drawings that didn't make it into the book, and put all that extra effort into the new drawings just to suit the story, just to suit the pacing. What discipline, what a kind of really beautiful aesthetic choice. But I don't know where these drawings are, I don't know what they look like, and I don't know if anybody has images of them. So if any of you know, if any of you have talked to Bernie about this or have any understanding of what those drawings might be or where they might be, let me know in the comments, because I would love to get my hands on them and make another video that features the missing drawings from Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein. When I first had the idea for this video, I thought it was going to be a short one, just a quick one to feature the works and that's it. But once I started making it, I realized that I wanted to go deeper and deeper into it. I was really excited about the content. So it's going to end up being a 4-part series. You just saw the first part, which covers the first half of the book. The second part is going to be just the montage of still lives as a kind of bonus episode for you to just really zoom into the images and see them in close up for all their details. The third part will cover the second half of the book and all the illustrations that are there. And part 4 is going to be a special interview with my friend, colleague, and design professor, Lisa Winstanley. Because when I showed her this book, because I had questions about the design choices I saw being made in here, she got really excited about the design choices she saw in the book. So we're going to talk about it and we're going to share it with you as a special episode. So as usual, if you liked this episode and you want to see more, please actually like it and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you're notified about the next episodes that come up. So in the meantime, thanks for watching Fat Stacks.